The night Ethan Parker lost his room began with a slammed door and a sentence that changed how he saw his family forever. "You'll need to move your things out tonight." The words came from his younger brother, Mark, spoken calmly, almost politely, as if he were asking Ethan to borrow a jacket. Ethan stood in the hallway of their childhood home, shoes still on, work bag hanging from his shoulder, not fully understanding what he had just heard. "What?" Ethan asked. Mark didn't repeat himself. He just gestured toward the closed bedroom door at the end of the hall, the room Ethan had slept in since he was 15. The room with the blue walls, the old wooden desk, the window that faced the maple tree out front. "My stuff's already inside," Mark said. "You can take the couch, it makes sense." That was how it happened. No warning, no family meeting, no discussion. Ethan looked past Mark down the hallway that suddenly felt narrower than it ever had. The house smelled like dinner. His parents were downstairs, the TV on, pretending not to hear. That hurt more than Mark's words. At 32, Ethan wasn't supposed to be here. He knew that. But life hadn't gone the way he planned. He had a steady job, paid rent, helped with bills. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't careless. He just hadn't left yet. And now, he was being moved aside. Mark had moved back home 2 weeks earlier with big plans and loud confidence. He talked about his future constantly, his job, his fiancée, his next step. He filled rooms with his voice. Ethan had learned long ago that when Mark spoke, everyone listened. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He walked into his room and saw his brother's clothes already hanging in the closet. Desk chair was gone. The bedspread had been changed. It felt like walking into a place that used to be yours but no longer remembered you. He packed fast books, a lamp, a framed photo from college. He didn't take much because taking more would have meant staying longer. When he stepped back into the hallway with the box in his arms, Mark was already on his phone, smiling, comfortable. "You'll be fine," Mark said. "You're good at adjusting." That sentence followed Ethan all night. The couch was too short. The springs pressed into his back. The ceiling fan rattled softly above him. He stared at the dark ceiling, replaying every moment that led here. Every time he stayed quiet. Every time he chose peace over honesty. Every time he told himself it wasn't worth the fight. Sometime after midnight, he realized something cold and clear. No one had pushed back because no one expected him to. The next morning, Ethan left before sunrise. He didn't want to see Mark making coffee in his kitchen. He didn't want to see his parents avoid his eyes. He drove straight to work, hands tight on the steering wheel, chest heavy with something he couldn't name yet. At a coffee shop near his office, he stood in line, barely aware of the people around him. When he reached the counter, the barista asked how he was doing. "Good," he said automatically. Cade turned and almost bumped into someone. "Sorry," they said at the same time. That was how he noticed her. She had soft brown hair pulled back loosely and a calm face that made it easy to breathe. She smiled, not the quick, polite kind, but something warmer. She carried a book under her arm. "No worries," she said. They ended up at nearby tables. Ethan sat down, staring into his coffee, when he felt someone looking at him. It was her. She lifted her cup slightly, like a quiet greeting. He nodded back. For the first time since the night before, his chest eased. The day passed quickly. Work kept him busy, but the feeling followed him, that sense of being quietly erased. When evening came, he didn't rush home. He walked a long way to his car, letting the city noise fill the silence in his head. When he finally returned, the house felt different. Laughter came from his old room. Mark's laughter. The door was shut. Ethan stood there for a moment, box still in his car, realizing he no longer had a place to put it. That night on the couch again, he thought about the word Mark had used, adjusting. He had been adjusting his whole life, making himself smaller, easier, less visible. It had cost him things he didn't even realize he'd lost. The next morning, he went back to the coffee shop. She was there again, sitting by the window. This time, she spoke first. "You look like someone who didn't sleep." Ethan laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" They talked, just a little. Her name was Claire. She asked simple questions: where he worked, if he liked living nearby. He answered honestly without saying too much. When it was time to leave, she said, "See you tomorrow." He nodded, surprised at how much that mattered. That night, the couch felt less heavy. Not because things were better, but because something had started. Ethan didn't know it yet, but losing his room wasn't the worst thing that would happen to him. It was the moment he finally realized he had been fading out of his own life. And that realization was only the beginning. Ethan Parker signed a lease with a shaking hand, and for the first time in months, the future felt like something he could actually touch. The paper was thin, the apartment was small, the decision was heavy. But as he handed it back to the landlord, Ethan felt a quiet strength settle in his chest. This was his choice. No one had pushed him into it. No one had taken it away. The morning after signing, he didn't go home. Instead, he drove straight to the coffee shop. Claire was already there, sitting by the window like she always did, sunlight resting on the table beside her. When she looked up and saw him, her smile came easily, like she'd been expecting him. "You look different," she said as he sat down. "I am," Ethan replied. And this time he meant it. The days that followed moved fast. Ethan packed his things properly now, not in a rush, not in shame. Each item he placed in a box felt lighter than before. When he told his parents he was moving out, they looked surprised, then quiet. No one tried to stop him. Mark nodded once, distracted, already focused on his own plans. Ethan didn't wait for an apology. The apartment was across town, above a bakery that smelled like fresh bread every morning. The walls were bare, the floors cold, the rooms echoing. But when Ethan closed the door behind him on the first night, the silence felt clean. He slept on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ceiling. There was no couch spring digging into his back, no laughter behind closed doors, just space. And space changed him. Mornings became calmer. Evenings felt longer. Ethan started walking instead of driving, noticing things he used to rush past. He smiled more without realizing it. His shoulders stopped carrying weight that had been there for years. Claire became part of those days without force. They met for coffee, then lunch, then quiet walks after work. Their conversations stretched, deepened, slowed. She spoke about her own past jobs that didn't last, relationships that ended gently but still hurt. She understood what it meant to feel paused while the world moved forward. "You don't have to rush," she told him one evening as they walked along the river. "You're allowed to take up space." No one had ever said that to him before. Ethan started to believe it. One weekend, Claire helped him choose a lamp. They stood in a small store, laughing at how serious he was taking it. "It's just a lamp," she teased. "It matters," he said. "It's my first one." She smiled at that. As the apartment filled slowly, a table, a chair, a framed photo, the space began to feel lived in. Not perfect, but real. Then began waking up with purpose instead of dread. Work felt different too. He spoke up more. He said no when he needed to. People noticed. One night, sitting on the floor with takeout containers between them, Claire asked the question he knew was coming. "You miss them?" She asked softly. Ethan thought of the house, the hallway, the closed door. "I miss who I thought I was there," he said, "but not the place." Claire didn't push. She didn't try to fix it. She just stayed. The distance from his family grew, not from anger, but from clarity. When Ethan visited, he stayed brief, polite, calm. He no longer tried to explain himself. He didn't need their approval to feel steady. Mark barely noticed the change. Hurt less than Ethan expected. One evening, after a long walk, Claire stood at Ethan's door, hands in her coat pockets. "I like this version of you," she said. "The one who's choosing." Ethan held on to that sentence. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. The city grew colder, then brighter again. Ethan and Claire grew closer, not through big moments, but through small ones. Shared silence, soft laughter. Long talks that ended without needing conclusions. There was attraction, yes, but more than that, there was trust. Ethan found himself planning again. Not grand plans, but honest ones. Trips he wanted to take. Skills he wanted to learn. A life that didn't shrink him to fit someone else's comfort. One night, as rain tapped against the windows, Ethan stood alone in his apartment, looking around. He thought about the night he lost his room, how small he had felt, how invisible. He wasn't that man anymore. When he told Claire he was ready to move forward with his life, with his heart, she didn't rush him. She just reached for his hand and said, "I'm here." That was enough. Ethan didn't win anything dramatic. There was no big speech, no final confrontation, no perfect ending. There was something better. There was peace. And as Ethan turned off the light, standing in a space that was fully his, he understood the truth clearly at last. His brother hadn't pushed him out of a room, it pushed him into becoming himself.